Hello, everyone. This is another Heretic or Brother Nathan, whichever you prefer. We are going to continue Rulers of Evil by Tupper Saucy. We're in chapter 10. If you have this PDF, which you can get for free by going to my website, anabaptistapologist.com, go to the library page, scroll down, you will find Rulers of Evil, and then you can go here at the bottom, type in page 100, and you'll find chapter 10. Definitions. And if you can see on the screen, I have a number of other tabs open. There's a lot that I want to talk about today on this Sabbath. I figured I would start by continuing the series here of reading through this book. That way I don't forget it. But then I have a few other things that I want to talk about. Some things related to the ongoing drama in the District of Criminals, Washington, D.C., concerning the wicked Satanist Donald Trump, him and his gang of antichrists, and their covering up of the Mossad Israeli honeypot scheme, led by Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, two reprobates who've really just become figureheads or representatives of a whole syndicate or a system of reprobates, including Donald Trump. So we're going to talk about some of that. We're going to look at some things that I posted on my Facebook page, and then we're going to kind of transition and talk about that issue as it relates to quote unquote the church, and look at some hypocrisy with regards to some people who are speaking out about it. And call some brothers and sisters to repentance. Get them to maybe reconsider their affiliations and that sort of thing. Maybe not necessarily their affiliations, but using some source material of things that, there comes a point in time where we have to stop promoting certain people. And then we're going to also look at some more Aaron Abke stuff here. But those are other videos. Right now, we're going to focus on chapter 10. So stay tuned because I'll have some other uploads today and probably tomorrow. So, chapter 10, definitions. The term Jesuit was first used to describe a member of the Society of Jesus in 1559. It did not originate from within the society, but from outsiders. Whether intended derisively or respectfully, Jesuit does appear to have been inspired. We find in the Bible, Numbers 26:44, the mention of Jesuits. These Jesuits were the progeny of Jesui, whose name in Hebrew, Yeshivi, means level. The Jesuits certainly leveled the Protestant menace. Jesui was a great-grandson of Abraham. His father was the Israelite tribal chieftain Asher, Asher meaning happy. At Genesis 49:20, Asher's posterity is divinely prophesied to yield royal dainties, ma adanim, or delights. Their uniquely privileged access to the minds and wills of kings has certainly enabled the Jesuits to yield copious harvests of royal delights. But in fulfilling their scriptural prophecy, the Jesuits seem to have alienated themselves from people who use the English language. This does not disappoint St. Ignatius. Let us hope, he once wrote, that the society may never be left untroubled by the hostility of the world for very long. America's first indigenous dictionary was compiled by Noah Webster and published in 1828. His American Dictionary of the English Language reflects the place held by Jesuits in the opinion of a public whose senior citizens had brought forth the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Webster himself was 41 when the Constitution was ratified. Jesuit, one of the Society of Jesus, so called, founded by Ignatius Loyola, a society remarkable for their cunning in propagating their principles. Jesuited, conforming to the principles of the Jesuits. Jesuitess, a female Jesuit in principle. Jesuitic, Jesuitical, pertaining to the Jesuits or their principles and arts. 2. Designing, cunning, deceitful, prevaricating, Jesuitically, craftily. Jesuitism, the arts, principles, and practices of the Jesuits. 2. Cunning, deceit, hypocrisy, prevarication, deceptive practices to effect a purpose. 178 years later, Webster's third New International Dictionary, 1986, informs us that the language has not repented. Jesuit, 1. A member of a religious society for men founded by St. Ignatius Loyola in 1534. 2. One given to intrigue or equivocation, a crafty person, casuist. Jesuited, Jesuitic, Jesuitic or Jesuitical. 1. Of or relating to the Jesuits, Jesuitism or Jesuitry. 2. Having qualities thought to resemble those of a Jesuit. Use despairingly. Jesuitize, to act or teach in the actual or ascribed manner of a Jesuit, to indoctrinate with actual or ascribed Jesuit principles. Jesuitry, principles or practices ascribed to the Jesuits as the practice of mental reservation, casuistry, and equivocation. Webster's online dictionary, W.W. Webster, 1999, is particularly revealing. Here we read that Jesuit means a member of the Roman Catholic Society of Jesus founded by St. Ignatius Loyola in 1534 and devoted to missionary and educational work, and that a Jesuit is one given to intrigue or equivocation. W.W. Webster defines, quote, to intrigue as meaning, quote, to cheat, trick, plot, and scheme, and to equivocate as, quote, to use equivocal language, especially with an intent to deceive, to avoid committing oneself in what one says. Equivocal language, according to the same source, is language subject to two or more interpretations and usually used to mislead or confuse, of uncertain nature or disposition toward a person or thing, of doubtful advantage, genuineness, or moral rectitude. The Jesuit discipline has elevated mental reservation, casuistry, and equivocation to high arts. You will not find a more hilarious defense of these arts than Blaise Pascal's classic Pastoral Letters, 1657, freely available on the internet. Purposefully written to a friend, the letters report conversations Pascal is having with the Jesuit casuist. The Jesuit defends his arts thusly. Men have arrived at such a pitch of corruption nowadays that, unable to make them come to us, we must even go to them. Otherwise, they would cast us off altogether. And what is worse, they would become perfect castaways. It is to retain such characters as these that our casuists have taken under consideration the vices to which people of various conditions are most addicted, with the view of laying down maxims which, while they cannot be said to violate the truth, are so gentle that he must be very impracticable. He must be a very impracticable subject indeed who is not pleased with them. The grand project of our society for the good of religion is never to repulse anyone, let him be what he may, and so avoid driving people to despair. End quote. Jesuit moral theology hardly needs a satirist. Its humor is self-contained. Consider Hermann Busenbaum, one of the Society's most venerable moral theologians. Busenbaum literally wrote the book on self-serving logic. He celebrated Medulla Theologiae Moralis, the marrow of moral theology, 1645, enjoyed more than 200 printings and was required ethics in all the Jesuit colleges. A man of stout appetites, Busenbaum constructed an equivocation to relieve himself of the obligation to eat fish on Fridays. Quote, on Fridays, every good Catholic must eat only creatures that live in the water, which justifies ordering a nice roast duck. Lissenbaum demonstrated how mental reservation could enable a criminal to escape a charge of breaking and entering. Did you force the window to gain felonious entry into these premises? Asked the judge. Certainly not, replies the accused, qualifying his denial with the mental reservation, I entered through the skylight. Father Geary, who taught moral theology at the Roman College from his book Casus Consentier, 1875, approved of the way an adulterous wife, having just received absolution for her sin from a priest, used mental reservation to mislead her husband. Sorry, I'm going to be opening a tab later to go over some things here. Quote, to the entreaties of her husband, she absolutely denied the fault. I have not committed it, she said, meaning adultery, such as I am obliged to reveal. In other words, I have not committed an adultery. She could deny her sin as a culprit may say to a judge who does not question him legitimately. I have not committed any crime, adding mentally, in such a manner that I should reveal it. This is the opinion of Saint Liguori and of many others. The Saint Liguori to whom Gury refers is Alphonse Liguori, who declared patron saint of confessors and moralists by Pope Pius XII. Saint Liguori was not a Jesuit himself, but he was devoted to them. He facilitated adultery by means of an equivocation. Quote, an adulteress questioned by her husband may deny her guilt by declaring that she has not committed adultery, meaning idolatry, for which the term adultery is often employed in the Old Testament. Casuistry is the process of applying moral principles falsely in deciding the rights or wrongs of a case. The word casuistry comes from cases. W. Webster equates casuistry with rationalization, quote, to cause something to seem reasonable, to provide plausible but untrue reasons for conduct, end quote. In early 1999, President Clinton's biographer, David Marinis, could be seen remarking on talk shows that the president owed his formidable skills as a criminal defendant to his training in casuistry at Georgetown University. That's a Jesuit university. The same university, I believe, that Donald Trump went to. The great Jesuit casuist Antonio Escobar pardoned evildoing as long as it was committed in pursuit of a lofty goal. Quote, purity of intention, he declared in 1627, may justify actions which are contrary to the moral code and to human laws. Hermann Busenbaum ratified Escobar with his own famous maxim, quote, cum finis est lictus etiam media sunt licita. Quote, if the end is legal, the means are legal. Escobar and Busenbaum boiled down to the essential doctrine of terrorism, the end justifies the means. Casuistry solves the problem of usury. Although the voice of Jesus commanded, quote, lend hoping for nothing again, and your reward will be great, Luke 6:35, Jesuit lenders often charged exorbitant interest. Father Geary explained the principle. If lending 100 francs, you are losing 10 francs by it, you lend really 110 francs, then you shall receive 110 francs. Indeed, casuistry has set the moral tone of world economics. In his Universae Theologiae Moralis, quote, Catholic Moral Theology, 1652 to 66, Antonio Escobar rendered the opinion that the giving of short weight is not to be reckoned as a sin when the official price for certain goods is so low that the merchant would be ruined thereby. By this reasoning, the international network of central banks, beginning with the Knights Templars and sustained by the Society of Jesus, has been absolved of manipulating monetary values. Doing so helps individual sovereign nation states manage their subjects. Subjects are cyclically required to part with true value, that is hard-earned gold and silver coinage, in exchange for intangible credit denominated in paper notes whose official promises to repay in precious coinage are cyclically broken. As the most powerful office in Roman Catholicism, the Black Papacy might have promoted stable national economies by means of the divinely fair monetary system commanded in the Bible at Leviticus 19. Quote, "Ye shall do no unrighteousness in measure, just balances, just weights shall ye have. I am the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt." Instead, it has promoted Escobar's casuistry, which directs merchants to survive official value manipulations by cheating one another. There are significant sociological consequences. When giving short weight becomes policy, a moral paradigm is set. That paradigm governs more than just commercial transactions. It affects human relationships as well. Partners in friendships, marriages, and families begin giving short weight, giving less than represented. This results in one-sided, frustrating, dysfunctional emotional transactions, and ultimately an aberrant society. The ultimate beneficiary of aberrant societies, of course, is Pontifex Maximus, whose profession is their regulation. We depend solely on dictionary definitions. We learn that Jesuits are churchmen and teachers of a doubtful moral rectitude, who are likely to cheat, trick, plot, scheme, deceive, and confuse us while avoiding to commit themselves verbally. When we study their published moralists, we sense a rather vibrant presence of the trickster, but in the Society's defense, it must be said, these are legitimate character traits for a militia empowered by a declaration of war. And we must remember that Paul III's bull ordaining the Society of Jesus, Regimini Militantis Ecclesiae, is just such a declaration. Human life in a declared war becomes subject to the first great rule of war. Belli legum dormit. Quote, "In war, the law sleeps." When the law sleeps, the unarmed priest's only weapons are the intrigue, deceit, equivocation, casuistry, and mental reservation with which the Jesuits have made themselves so notorious and so often despised. In forthcoming chapters, we shall be examining how the Society of Jesus made war against Great Britain and the British colonies during the second half of the 18th century, and then against the sovereign American states a century later. In each instance, the warfare was of the highest sophistication. It was so subtly conceived and so masterfully executed that neither of the major combatants could discern the presence of Jesuits in the equation. The amazing technology of Jesuit warfare, that is the subject of our next chapter. All right. Very interesting. And it goes without saying that Paul is an example of that. Let's see here. 1 Corinthians 9:22. Quote, "I become all things to all men, that I might by all means save some." That is the Apostle Paul's modus operandi. It needs to be said here that I put apostle in air quotes. Paul is a deceptive serpent, child of Satan, um, thus making him an illegitimate child of God, thus a bastard. And he says he becomes all things to all men, that he might by all means save some. That means that he'll do whatever it takes to, quote, save people from their sins and convert them. In other words, the ends justify the means for Paul. If you type in "I become all things to all men" into Google, you'll get an AI overview, and I'll read it here. The phrase, quote, become all things to all men originates from the Bible, 1 Corinthians 9:22, and refers to the Apostle Paul's strategy of adapting his approach to different people in order to effectively communicate the gospel and potentially save them. It doesn't mean compromising one's beliefs or values, but rather finding common ground and understanding in order to connect with others and share the message of faith. So this AI overview is, I think, extremely I would say biased as far as it's definitely working to protect the idea of Paul's apostleship. Um, because it does mean compromising one's beliefs or values. Paul says that to those who are not under the law, I am become as not under the law. To those who are under the law, I am under the law. So we see this example really well in First Corinthians. Let me see here. He asked, First Corinthians chapter 10, verse 29. Well, let's read verses 28 and 20 from 28 to 30. He says, but if someone tells you this food was offered to idols, then do not eat it for the sake of the one who told you and for the sake of conscience. Verse 29, the other one's conscience, I mean, not your own. For why should my freedom be determined by someone else's conscience? Paul is saying he has freedom, he has knowledge, he has special gnosis that it's okay to eat food sacrificed to idols because he knows that an idol is nothing. But he says if the person you're sitting down to eat with is offended at that, don't eat it. Not for your conscience sake, but for theirs. Verse 30, if I partake in the meal with thankfulness, why am I denounced because of that which I give thanks? So Paul is definitely saying, I'm going to I'm going to deceive this person. I'm going to condescend to this person in order to, quote, save them because I don't want to offend their conscience. It's ridiculous. Idolatry is a wicked, abominable sin. And Paul says he has special gnosis, special knowledge that an idol is nothing. Therefore, I have freedom to eat food sacrificed to idols. Well, what does Yahshua, what does Paul's Lord and Savior say? Revelation 2:14, Jesus says, but I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed unto idols, and to commit fornication. So in 1 Corinthians 10:29, if Paul was sitting across from Yeshua, from Jesus, Jesus would be offended that Paul is eating food sacrificed to idols. So then in that particular circumstance, Paul would not eat the food sacrificed to idols, not for his conscience sake, but for Yeshua's conscience sake. So Paul is a wicked reprobate. Paul is, I would argue, a proto-Jesuit, a deceiver, a trickster, a shapeshifter, a reptilian. He's a chameleon, right? Put another way, Romans 14:16, do not allow what you consider good then to be spoken of as evil. So, you know, we have to be mindful of these things. Anyway, so that's the end of chapter 10. And thank you for watching. Stay tuned. I have more videos coming.